The stuff is here now. Great new taste sensation. Light and free now. Gives you elevation. Enough is never enough. Enough is never enough of the stuff.
Hello and welcome to Killer Score. And every time I get that countdown, I am very tempted to just start singing the iCarly theme.
God damn it!
But
I'm surprised it took you that long to make the joke.
I was always internally making it, but I always held back. Yeah, welcome to Killer Score, the podcast that covers cult classic films with killer soundtracks and their composers, or soundtracks in general, that we just feel deserve more attention. And we have a new season in multiple ways. It is the first new season of the first episode of the new season of Killer Score, and we're also in fall. So now it is time for our
spooky season.
Yep. It's time for our October stuff, where we always cover horror films or horror comedies or anything we just feel fits the theme, to be honest. I mean, we could always even cover something that is, just kind of fall-ish.
But what's the fun in that? Fuck that shit.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'm your host, Daulton. You can find me on multiple sources that will be linked in the description like usual. Twitter, YouTube, all that stuff. And we would just like to remind you, if you guys like this podcast, we do have a Patreon that will be linked in the description of all our episodes. Even just the lowest tier, our VHS tier, will help each month, just to help us, continue this endeavor, because we want to get to the point where we can focus basically entirely on this for you guys and other creative pursuits, but we really want to make this a full-time thing for you.
We also want to get a boom mic.
Yeah, we also want to get fancier mics. So I figure before we get into this episode, I'd start a new thing to familiarize the viewers with us more, and we could start talking about what we've been up to lately in media we've consumed before we get into it. But first, let me pass it off to my other hosts so they can give their usual introductions.
Hi, Erin here from witchandcraftsnj.com, facebook.com/witchandcrafts. I have a whole spiel, but I'm not going to go through that right now.
There's also an Etsy.
There's also an Etsy called witchandcraftsnj. More stuff to be added there. And we also will be in about 5 weeks. Oh god, 5 weeks.
Yeah, you're almost done your stuff.
I'm almost done my stuff. We'll be at Monster Mania 52 in Oaks, PA we'll be there Friday to Monday, but we're going to be there on Thursday, but that's just prepping and stuff. Mm-hmm. Anyway, and next week's episode is a little tie-in to a little product we have.
Yep. Oh, and also, if you guys want to start getting Killer Score merch, we will be having our first ever tiny little drop of Killer Score merch at that convention.
Yes, indeed. Richie here, Richie Eckert's Rad Voices. Coming up with new voice videos on my own channel, I promise you. I have just taken a lot of time to some huge projects that has another co-host involved as the star.
Yeah. So, we'll get more into that when the project is closer to being ready. So.
Yes. But, it is always a joy of mine when I get to my October episodes. I feel like those are like our signature content. Like,
yeah, because it was some of our earliest content as well.
Yeah, like it's always special when we take our Halloween ritual material and share it amongst ourselves, especially when it's something that only one of us has seen, like when I did Near Dark and when you did Phantom of the Paradise. But since, as I've said before, I can only throw so many cowboy vampire movies at the two of you.
And there's only so many.
And we're not going to be covering vampires because that movie blows.
Yeah, I mean, is the score good, though?
It is, but it's edge-tastic is the problem.
Fair enough.
However, I decided that this year I'm gonna take it in a different direction and talk about a favorite creator of mine, a director who is not the most famous ever, but to those in the know, he is a darling of cult B movies.
Yeah, but as I said before we get into that, let's do our little like what's going on with us stuff, anything we've consumed lately, because this is our Spooktober stuff, and we would like to, maybe toss out some media recommendations or stuff we've consumed lately that we think would be good for the season, of course.
Right.
Yeah, so Rich, since you have it's your episode, why don't you tell us what you've been up to lately? Any good media you've touched, or anything you want to tell people about?
Well, I'm less into current stuff than everyone else. I'm always slow on the uptake for what's new, I guess.
Fair
but I've gotten really into that Sandman Netflix show.
It's very good. It's very
really
good.
It's, I'm really enjoying that. The casting has been perfect across the board. It grounds the comic without being too much of a departure from the surreal source material.
I kind of like how they've really went more pragmatic with this and really cut down on the DC aspects of it, because that was only really important in the early parts of Sandman anyway.
Yeah, I like how it's jumped into being more self-contained.
Yeah, it's more pragmatic.
And the guy they got for Dream is just spot on.
Yeah, and gender-bending Constantine into another version of Joanna Constantine, played by the excellent Jenna Coleman, was I think a good choice.
Yeah, and this was a bit more... This is a bit old at this point, but Obi-Wan Kenobi ended up being decent. It started off really rough, but I do love the character piece that goes on at the very end. No spoilers, but it is really good, and it vindicates me about the casting of certain characters.
Nice. As for myself, recently I have been checking out Shudder's new versions of an old program that used to be on television itself. Do either of you recall those old scariest movie moments, or like TV specials that they used to run on TV?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Shudder essentially resurrected that kind of idea, and they've been releasing weekly episodes for a few weeks now of oh hey, these are this is our own updated version on it, and I've been very pleasantly surprised to see a good mix of new and old and foreign films as well. They've really been broaching out. You've seen they've had Korean films on the list. They had some Middle Eastern films on there.
Yeah.
And even some ones that I feel get overlooked that I might even want to cover sometime. They mentioned Tobe Hooper's Salem's Lot adaptation, which I feel gets really overlooked now.
Criminally underrated, and Stephen King himself has gone out and said that it's one of his personal favorite adaptations of one of his work, right up with The Shawshank Redemption, Stand By Me, and...
I think he said the same about Green Mile, right?
The Green Mile, yes.
Yeah.
And he loves 1408, which I get. That's one of the best adaptations of his work.
Possible candidate for the show, too.
Oh, absolutely. Love me some Cusack. Underrated actor, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
Other than that, I've also been consuming some older horror game stuff. I recently started playing this really cool visual novel called Mothman 1966, which deals with a lot of the Mothman sightings back then in a not even a point and click format, I would say, more like a typical visual novel, dual branching choices, that kind of stuff. Occasional puzzle solving,
Yeah.
And that's been a fun play, and I've also been playing still haven't gotten around to getting RE Village, but I've been playing some of the other, replaying RE2 remake, which is of course fantastic, and the RE3 make I've been playing. And speaking
of games, I've recently got a gift from your brother. I'm gonna play the second Ni no Kuni soon.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
And yeah, I've heard those games are good. I never got around.
The first
to playing
one was so gorgeous and so much fun.
Yeah, I never got around to those, but I've been meaning to. And
I have it on the Switch. The
yeah.
first one.
And I also checked out, I've been checking out some of the more indie game stuff. I've been playing some of Puppet Combo's stuff. Always makes excellent horror games.
Oh, West of Dead. That's one I picked up recently. It's kind of like Weird West if it were crossed with Hades. And you play as a cowboy in purgatory, voiced by Ron Perlman.
Oh, that's fun.
Fun little roguelike.
Yeah, roguelikes can always be a delight when they do them right.
It's tough. It's frustrating.
Oh, yeah, roguelikes usually are.
But it's stylish and the soundtrack kicks ass.
Yeah. And I've also recently got around to checking out. I bought that port of Fatal Frame 5 that they brought to the Switch. Really excited that we're finally getting an officially localized version of Fatal Frame 4. I thought they were never going to localize that one at this point because that was a Wii title.
Yeah.
And it just didn't do that well in Japan, so they never brought it over. So I just kind of figured, yeah, we're never going to get that, which, I was disappointed. It's Suda. But also, we checked out, Erin and we both checked out the Rob Zombie Monsters film.
Movie.
And I quite enjoyed it, but let's pass it off to Erin to get her thoughts on that and some other stuff she's been checking out lately.
So the Monsters movie, so I thought it was a lot of like fun, campy, silly humor. Critics have been really hard on it, which I think is really unfair.
Yeah.
Because it's a fun movie, it's the Monsters, you're not gonna get some big sweeping epic drama out of the Monsters.
It's fluff.
It's fluff. It's gonna be fun.
It's candy.
Yeah. And also,
I saw a critic say, someone who was like less harsh on the film mentioned that they thought the lighting reminded them of literally candy commercials of those old Halloween season candy movie commercials you would get.
you know what the lighting actually reminded me of?
What?
Certain scenes in Beetlejuice.
I could see that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, when they're in the afterlife.
When they're in the afterlife and then just going through certain scenarios in Beetlejuice, the lighting in Transylvania reminded me very much of that.
The Transylvania lighting also actually reminded me of Batman Forever. Dark, a lot of darkness with bright lights to contrast.
A lot of neon, a lot of vaporwave kind of thing.
And everyone was a delight. I loved Sylvester McCoy as Igor. I kind of wish they had a bit more of him, to be honest.
I wanted more Igor. I really wanted more of him because he's Sylvester McCoy and he's just so fun. And I wanted him to be more than just a bat later in the movie.
Yeah. But he was delightful. His comedic timing is not slowing down over the years. It almost makes me wish they would bring him back for Doctor Who.
Of course, I would love that.
Even if
the
they write
rolling of the R's.
Yeah, he really
I can't roll R's,
really leaned into it. He really leaned into it.
Round tones.
Yeah.
I thought the one dirty joke the film had with the pool boy
Oh,
thing,
Jesus.
that was delightful. I thought that was just the amount of the parents will get this joke humor, because it's a very wholesome movie.
It is. And speaking of wholesome, another thing that Daulton and I checked out, which I was recommended by Royalty Soaps, which is a YouTube channel of soap making. All my YouTube channel following and that kind of thing is very crafty or cooking or that kind of thing, because that's the kitsch stuff I'm into.
Yeah.
Over the Garden Wall.
Yeah, which I've heard good things about for years. I always see the merch in stores of the alternative
especially
stores.
around Halloween.
Yeah, and I was always curious about it because I would occasionally hear good things from friends online, and I was like, yeah, I'll get around to it, and we finally eventually did, and we watched it in one night.
Yeah, we went through all of Over the Garden Wall in one night because it's pretty short. You can get through it in a couple hours.
Yeah.
They're basically each episode's 15 minutes or so.
Yeah.
And there's only, like, what, 10 episodes?
Yeah, like 10 or 12 episodes.
10 or 12 episodes, so you can get through it pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
But we thought I loved it. I thought it was a perfect mix of, like, dark and wholesome.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, oh, this stuff is so cute. There's a bunch of, like, silly songs and that kind of thing, but there's those dark undertones that we just love throughout it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you've seen Over the Garden Wall, you know what I mean, when Beatrice says you need 2 coins to go see the witch.
Yeah, that was the first time we had, like, whoa, because, like, immediately I thought of Charon.
Yeah, I thought of, like, Greek mythology.
Yeah. And I thought of, like, the passing on into, like, another...
Yeah, like, the 2 coins needed to pass to the afterlife, basically.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
lot of subtext going on there.
A lot of subtext. And, there's also a lot of references to different mythologies in there besides that.
Yeah.
Like, I loved how... Oh, what's her name? The witch that they were trying to get to... in the
Adelaide, yeah.
Adelaide. I love how she had a very Baba Yaga aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, I can get behind this. I love this.
Yeah, just all sorts of little mythological references strewn throughout there. Pottsfield clearly has a lot of influence from, folklore, like folk culture in general.
Yeah, because it's called Pottsfield. If you know what a potter's field is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a town of pumpkin skeleton people.
Yeah, and, like, there's clearly a lot of influence from, like, Celtic culture in that section with, like, maypoles and the like.
Yeah, and there's also
Germanic in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's also the references to New England folklore.
Yeah.
Especially. Because you see a lot of, like, pilgrim kind of attire and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And my favorite was the songs that'll get stuck in your head. Potatoes and molasses.
Yeah.
Potatoes and molasses. It's gonna get stuck in your head for the longest time possible.
If you check it out, yeah.
It's gonna just get stuck in your head.
This is gonna be an earworm episode.
Yeah, I still think, man, I wish the Highwayman's song was longer because that like really stuck out.
Oh,
to
that
me.
was so good.
Because
yeah.
like I just started thinking of the old Cap Calloway like cartoon stuff for Betty Boop when that
Oh,
section
absolutely.
happened.
Yeah, like Minnie the Moocher and that kind of thing.
Yeah, with the ghosts dancing.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it brought to mind, and it's delightful.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
And on an unrelated note, there was another thing that Daulton and I watched that was very a mix between humorous, wholesome, and just kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
We watched the Jay and Silent Bob reboot.
Oh, yeah.
Say what you want about Kevin Smith. That's actually a good movie.
I thought it was fun, and it was delightful seeing Ben Affleck work with Kevin Smith again after they had their falling out a few years ago.
Yeah.
It was great to see them bury the hatchet and
Ben Affleck having fun again.
Oh yeah, Ben
absolutely.
He's clearly has so much fun whenever he gets to work with Kevin Smith.
Absolutely. I'm trying to think of other stuff I checked out besides like podcasts. I mean, everyone knows Last Podcast on the Left if you're into weird and dark shit. Lore, same goes if you're into weird and dark shit. But yeah, it's mostly what I've been consuming recently is a lot of podcasts, because I like listening to them when I'm working on stuff.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, I'm into weird and dark shit, so Lore, Last Podcast on the Left, that kind of thing.
And for those of you who are into weird and dark stuff, there's a bunch of good anime out recently that covers that. Check out something the night. It'll come to me later. It's that vampire one that just came out on High Dive.
Yeah.
And absolutely check out Chainsaw Man. I want it to blow up. I'm a huge manga fan. I've been a fan of the manga since like there was only like 20 chapters out. And I think it deserves a lot of recognition. If you're into like hyper violence, your dooms and stuff like that, check out Chainsaw Man. You'll have a good time. So I'm going to pass it off to Richie so we can learn a little bit about what we're going to watch.
As I've said previously, this movie comes to us from a director near and dear to my heart. A director who brought the camp fun of the 50s B horror movie back into the 80s and beyond.
So your Corman, your Castle, that kind of stuff.
Yes. And I am talking, of course, about the proud graduate of that school of filmmaking, Mr. Larry Cohen.
Huh. Yeah, I'm not sure if I've seen a Cohen film aside from this, and it's been a long time. I was actually, I know Richie's familiar with it. I'm familiar with it. Erin, did you hear of the stuff before this?
No, not really. I mean, I've heard of the stuff, not like I've heard the movie referenced, I think, a couple times on Red Letter Media, but that was really it.
Yeah, I was actually informed of this movie ages ago by old buddy of mine, oldest friend I'm still friends with, actually, known him since the 4th grade. And you've all met him. I'm not gonna give away his name because I don't know if he would like that on the podcast, but I'll just say him by like one of his online tags. Our buddy Zen from the Discord, our Discord server, and some of the other stuff we know them from. And he's got a weird range of films and stuff he knows, and he seems to know a lot of older films that are kind of weird. And he was the first person, and he was the first person to mention the stuff to me.
Yep, and Cohen's filmography is so diverse as to be
eclectic, very eclectic,
and eclectic as to be called amazing. Probably the biggest thing and earliest thing that he's been involved with was Black Caesar.
Oh, the blaxploitation film.
Yes. But then after that, he went on to write and direct several episodes of Columbo, and
well, I might have seen those then. So,
and later he sort of shifted into his more well-known ethos of throwback horror movies, really campy, practical effects heavy stuff like It's Alive, God Told Me To, and Q the Winged Serpent.
Oh, I'm somewhat familiar with Q. That film's got a very interesting history.
And that is a fun one that I'd love to cover someday, honestly. But
good candidate.
Possibly the most famous thing that Cohen is known for is the subject of today's episode, which, as Daulton and Erin have alluded to, is the satirical horror comedy corporate satire, The Stuff.
Yeah, the 80s was a good time for corporate satire and commercial satire in general. I mean, even aside from The Stuff, you had Child's Play, which earlier drafts leaned more into the consumerist aspects of the storyline.
Of the good guy dolls.
Of the good guy doll, and They Live.
Let's say They Live.
They Live is like the big one. And
Society.
Yeah, and there's some other ones you could really argue are like
Dawn of the Dead. Was that was the
70s?
Yeah, I would say that was in the 70s, but
that was like the prototype, though.
Yeah,
that was the prototype.
That was one of the prototypes. But consumerist like commentary and horror is like it's more well known than it's more like around than you would think it is.
And this.
Sorry. Hey Dalton, remember that really bad Amazon movie we watched called Scare Me, where it was like, we live in a society, and the guy's like, oh hell no, and just leaves?
Yeah, that was certainly a film that we saw.
And we are not covering on the podcast because it's absolute garbage.
I was going to say, you could argue Halloween 3 is also has like
the commercialization of Halloween.
Yeah, exactly.
So, while it is a prominent subtextual theme in many, many, many horror movies of those decades,
Gremlins and Gremlins 2, you could argue that as well, you know.
Yeah.
None are as overt as in The Stuff.
Yeah, and this is also supposed to be sort of like a pseudo pastiche of like The Blob, I've heard.
Oh yes, it is, and we will get to that. The Stuff is, as the ramping introduction has implied, a horror movie about a snack food that will kill you, and not in the slow way that most junk foods basically do.
God damn it, I like Cheetos.
It is a send-up of 80s commercialism through the lens of a bunch of common folk who learned that the calorie-free, white, creamy substitute to ice cream is actually alive and parasitic and will turn you into a rubbery puppet if you eat too much of it.
Is this a wet puppet movie?
I don't know about wet, but it is a puppet movie, and the effects are appropriately cheesy and owe so much to the Blob.
I wouldn't be surprised if the monster blood from Goosebumps was influenced by this.
By the stuff, because it does very much have, as Daulton alluded to in an earlier episode, it does have a very R.L. Stine-esque tone.
Speaking of the monster goo in Goosebumps, this will probably end up reminding me of a few episodes of Are You Afraid of the Dark? Which was like a predecessor to the Goosebumps TV show on Nickelodeon, which they still show on Nickelodeon every once in a while around Halloween.
Yeah, and I think there's even a new Are You Afraid of the Dark series that came
There
out.
is. I watched that show when I was like in middle school and high school, and I fell in love with it just because of the reruns it would air on Nickelodeon around Halloween.
My paranoia is getting to me so badly, and I want to make sure that things are fine. One moment. Intermission. And we're back. Apologies for that. The pop in the microphone audio made me wonder if the static was back again. It is not.
Okay. So
I'll put a little edit there for you guys.
Yeah.
Now,
who's our composer for this one?
the composer to this stuff is actually someone who has not had very much work in much of anything else.
Really?
Yes.
That's interesting. Are we talking film-wise or just like in general?
In general.
Oh.
The most I could find on him are a couple of short TV episode scores, like individual episode scores, and essentially nothing else.
Seems like mostly a TV composer.
TV composer, yeah. Two, actually. The strange thing about the stuff is that it has two separate composers.
Okay.
Oh.
One being Anthony Guiffin. Anthony Guiffin for the Anthony Guiffin for the moment-to-moment incidental score, and for the jingles, Richard Seaman.
These guys really have unfortunate names.
Yeah, Goofin and Seaman.
A composer named Richard Seaman composing jingles for a movie about viscous white stuff that can
let us not forget that a common nickname for Richard is Dick.
Nope, I don't think I have any jokes about that.
Yeah,
none whatsoever.
Well, what are we gonna?
I'm drawing a blank.
It writes itself. I'm not even gonna dignify it with a response. But did Richard Seaman work with advertising jingles before?
Yep, but it's mostly for really, really low budget stuff.
Well, still, it's appropriate given the tone of the film.
Given the tone of the film, and given
plop plop fizz fizz, oh what a relief it is.
And given the huge, just dense amount of commercials for this movie, I'm gonna say a good 10% of this movie are fake commercials for the stuff. The dedication to the style of which is just...
We talking like Paul Verhoeven levels here?
Just about.
With like RoboCop and Starship Troopers, all the commercials and stuff.
Yeah. I half expected the OCP guy to pop up and go, "I'd buy that for $1." But yeah, much like Paul Verhoeven, Larry Cohen has a lot of satirical, anti-corporate, and anti-capitalist undertones in his films. This and God Made Me Do It are very critical of the weaponization of organized...
So this is like the capitalist version of Soylent Green. The anti-capitalist version of Soylent Green. Because, let's face it, Soylent Green is kind of a pro-capitalism movie.
Yeah. Wow. Wow, the mic hates me today. I am so sorry. But, this movie was, funnily enough, inspired by, much like most movies, Larry Cohen just taking a shower and contemplating just the terrible state of the world around him. And no, those are his. I'm not making that
like,
up.
Diet food crazes was probably like a thing too.
Yes.
And maybe Reaganomics.
The script was actually an original story by Cohen, and he is quoted as saying, "My main inspiration was the consumerism and corporate greed found in our country and the damaging products that were being sold. I was constantly reading in the newspapers about various goods and materials being recalled because they were harming people."
Still relevant to this day.
Yeah.
I mean, you got tobacco companies. They knew that their products were
harmful for, like, basically from the beginning, you know, they knew it.
but they said nothing because of the profit.
Yeah, we actually just watched a video on that recently.
Yeah, there's some pretty fascinating videos out there that are about, like, you know, like, all about that. In fact, I'll send the link to that documentary all about, like, smoking to Richie, so he can post it in the description for you guys to check out.
And I brought this up because I am a huge fan of this brand of horror comedy. I wouldn't say this is my favorite one ever, because having re-watched it recently, I can tell you it is flawed. And I'm not just talking about the effects, even though those do have a couple of goofy failures in them.
I'm guessing it's, from the way you're saying that, there's not really much of a plot focus. It's mostly a series of vignettes. There's not, like, a focus.
Plot takes get a good 30 minutes to kick off properly and is more concerned with everyone's individual reactions to the stuff. And also the climax, which we will get into eventually.
Kind of weak, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Okay.
But probably the best and worst part of this movie, however, is the casting of Larry Cohen's pet actor, Michael Moriarty.
Professor in mathematics, criminal mastermind.
James Moriarty.
It could be a descendant, you know.
God damn it. So, Michael Moriarty stars in this movie as he did in other Larry Cohen movies, and much like in those movies, he improvised basically all of his dialogue, and saying it shows is an understatement. On one hand, there are moments where it's funny. On the other hand, it kind of takes the gravity out of scenes that are otherwise comparatively serious.
Gotcha. So, you got anything else you want to tell us about before we pop right in this, baby?
Other than the fact that it is actually free on YouTube if you're willing to dig, not much. Don't
snitch. Don't be a snitch.
Damn it.
I'm telling our audience, don't be a snitch. Don't be a snitch, people.
I won't tell you where it is. No links for this, because just search it. It's
available on streaming platforms. You'll find
Amazon.
It. Yeah, and you'll find it. You know, you can find DVDs or Blu-rays of it, I'm sure.
Of course. New World Pictures has hands in all sorts of baskets.
Yeah.
But now that I've set a nice chaotic tone for this film, let us head back up to the screening room and begin the stuff.
Indeed.
And we're back on Killer Score after screening the Larry Cohen classic, The Stuff. As with previous viewing experiences, I really very much enjoyed this one, despite the fact that the flaws were as prevalent as they were before, and despite the fact that Michael Moriarty seems to be conspiring to undermine basically everyone else in the cast. Like I said, he is both the best and worst part of that movie, but there is a lot to unpack here, and a lot of trivia that I mixed in the ramping introduction, so let us see.
Well, you know, they can bear with us. We're trying a new format out. We're experimenting, you know.
Yeah, we're experimenting. But getting back to the typical format of things, I'd like to hear the impressions of my co-hosts.
Sure. So I've never actually seen the stuff before. I was only familiar with it in passing from our friend Zen I mentioned. A lot of times they would just like randomly say can't get enough of the stuff. And then I'd just be like, what are you doing? Is that a thing? And they explain the stuff to me. And I'm like, so it's the Blob? And they're like, yes. But not as good. And I'm like, okay. And then he would just, he just went, there's a character called Chocolate Chip Charlie. I'm like, I feel like you're messing with me at this point. And he was just like, nope. And then he would just go, can't get enough of the stuff, and walk away. And I'm just like, sometimes I wonder why I'm friends with you. But when you're friends with Zen like I am, that is a common experience. Another friend of the show of ours met Zen for the first time years ago. And after we were finished hanging out, they went, that was the weirdest and most like uncomfortable night of my life in many ways. So we're going to be hanging out with him again. Which, I mean, you guys have met Zen.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Zen is a weird motherfucker.
He's also one of the biggest sweethearts ever, weirdly.
Yeah, he's the nicest man ever. I've been friends with him longer than anyone else. I can't confidently say I could tell you a lot about them as a person because they deliberately obfuscate their, like, self so much.
Life details.
They're like a superhero.
Yeah.
Didn't you ask him about like sexual orientation, and he was just like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I was like, so like you and the guys, girls, nothing. I never seen you express interest in anyone, Zen. And Zen just goes, yeah, you don't need to know. And I'm like your best friend, and I'm curious why. I just said you're my best friend. You're funny.
It's like Daulton. It's like Daulton has his own Daulton.
It's like the only person who can like constantly stump and confuse and get a reaction out of me, and for that alone, Zen is just a superhero.
So, what do you think of their movie?
So, you know, Zen was right when they said it's the Blob, but worse. Doesn't matter which version, whether it's the original version with Steve McQueen or the remake, which is quite a good remake, I would say.
Great effects in that one.
Oh, amazing effects in that one. There are a few moments in that one where there's like touchy blue screen like there is in this one, but nowhere near as much as there is in this one. There's points in this where I was saying to myself, wow, Doctor Who had better effects at this and that point. And this is when Doctor Who's budget was slashed and they were actively trying to kill the show.
Yeah.
Because this came out in '85, which was that was the Colin Baker years.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And they really wanted to kill the show at that point. Like, they just did not like Colin Baker. Poor guy. You know, he had the worst time on that set, too. I saw a story from a few weeks ago where they were filming one of those scenes where a character gets trussed up on, like, one of those, like, sticks, and you, like, bring him through the forest like you do in, like, you know, like in Return of the Jedi when they, like, all the Ewoks do that. And
on pikes.
Yeah, and they were doing that to the Doctor, and Colin told him, okay, just keep me tied to this thing so we don't have to constantly tie and untie me, and it's easier on everyone. And they're like, yeah, of course. So they do it, and they're like, okay, it's getting a little too wet at the shooting location. Let's set up and go to another one. And everyone's like, right. And they walk off without Colin.
Wow.
And Colin's just like, guys?
Help.
Guys? And like,
all tied up here.
Literally, some people were walking their dogs and came by, and Colin just went, that dog's going to piss on me, isn't it? This is my luck. That dog's just going to piss on me. And the dog sniffs him and walks up, and the owners are like, hey. And he's just like, hi.
Can you get me down?
And they just like go, all right, have a good day. And they walk off. And it took like 20 minutes before anyone realized, oh wait, we forgot Colin. But getting back, yeah, Poor guy.
Larry Cohen's the stuff.
Yeah, the stuff. I'm sorry, I love to throw Doctor Who trivia out. But this film was pretty good. It's pretty slow in the beginning. Moriarty, James Moriarty.
Michael Moriarty.
Yeah, whatever.
Moriarty.
Yeah, the evil professor of mathematics who plays the Southern gentleman in this movie. I'm still convinced Michael Moriarty is actually an evil villain in real life too. Like, not only was he throwing everyone off with his improvs, I bet you he's organized several like bank heists. He has that vibe. He has that vibe.
He's like a real life Ocean.
Yeah, Frank Ocean. Not Frank.
Not Frank.
Not Frank Ocean. Frank Sinatra.
You picked it again.
That was funny.
Frank Ocean.
No, the guy in the Ocean movies does have the surname. Was it Billy Ocean?
No, that's another singer.
What is the guy's name? It's something Ocean from the Ocean's movies. Whatever. George Ocean? I don't know. Otis?
Rico Ocean.
Otis Ocean?
Wait.
Okay, yeah. Who we got?
His name was Danny Ocean.
Danny Ocean, that's it. Yeah, he's a real life Frank Danny Ocean, whatever.
Not to be confused with Danny California.
That is a song that exists.
We killed Richie.
Yeah. The best the incidental music in this movie, I wasn't too crazy over. I felt it was one of the weaker parts of the score.
It was charming though. It was so
There's
cheesy.
so many.
It was so cheesy.
There were so many obvious pastiches though. Like when you get towards the end with one scene, I'm like, this is just the A-Team theme.
Yeah.
And
Daulton and I were just singing along.
we were just doing it, and because like all was missing was a few notes to be the A-Team theme.
Just different enough so they
Yeah.
don't get a copyright strike.
Yeah. Paul Sorvino probably is the best part of this film, I would say. He's not trying to step over other people's line deliveries.
Not
he's
like
being,
Michael Moriarty.
Yeah, he's being a generous. That's the important thing. Paul Sorvino knows how to be a generous actor.
Like, he has a late part in this, but when he steps in, he gives it his all, and from what I can tell, Sorvino was never one to turn in a half-assed performance no matter what he was in.
No, and he's being a generous actor in this film. He's not stepping over lines. He's letting people like play off of him. He's not leaving them utterly baffled, like it's very clear that evil Moriarty is doing in this film, where there's several points where people are just like have like these looks of shock and horror on their face of, oh, this wasn't in the script. What are you doing to me?
There's literally one scene midway through the movie where Michael Moriarty has his character negotiate him with a shopkeeper, and he's like, how about we just chill out, have a bite to eat? And the shopkeeper goes, I already ate.
And he has this look on his face like, after the camera cuts, I'm going to punch you. I hate you so much right now.
He's like I could see the look in his eyes like, Michael, you piece of shit. This has been like the last 5 takes now.
Young Brian Bloom's good in this as well, I thought.
His brother.
Scott Bloom.
Yeah, but Brian Bloom's also in it as the brother.
Oh yeah, he is.
Yeah.
It's like a brief little.
Yeah, he's in it for a bit, but from what he was in, my boy Brian Bloom was good. I love him as Varric in the Dragon Age games. For those of you who played those.
And to those familiar with the new Wolfenstein games from Machine Games, I love him as B.J. Blazkowicz.
He's also like the most common voice actor to play Captain America.
Oh yeah, one of the best, honestly, in my opinion.
Yeah. And, other than that, you know, it was competently shot. There was a few shots I did question and a few fades where I was like,
why
is that the fade you chose? But overall, this is like a... Rich, earlier you called it a 7 out of 10. I would say that's fair. I would give it like 6, maybe 7 out of 10. It's above average.
Yeah. And now, Erin.
I would give this movie a 6.5 out of 10. I think that's fair. It's not the best movie we watched, but it's not the worst one either. It
Yeah.
falls in the middle of...
It's no Explorers.
It's not... Let's say it's not Explorers or Rock and Roll.
Yeah.
Why won't you let me live that down?
Why won't you untangle these cords?
Fuck you. All right,
We do have a lovely podcast here.
This is why we need a boom mic set up, guys.
Yeah, well, that's why we need one of those like arm things. You know?
Yeah, that's why I meant.
Please donate to our Patreon,
Patreon.
our Ko-fi.
I can actually don't. I'm not giving you my Venmo.
Send. We'll get a PO box, or you can send terrifying packages filled with like blood ritual sacrifice material in it. You know.
Anyway,
The usual.
Larry Cohen's the stuff.
Larry Cohen's the stuff. It's a middle of the road movie, I would say, because it's, as I said, it's not the best movie we've seen. It's definitely not the worst. There are some scenes where I was watching it going, why did you go with that? Especially with anything involving the blue screen, which just looks god-awful.
Yeah, they never use it at the right time.
And some of the ways don't even make sense.
They really, really don't.
Yeah, there's some shots where it's like you literally could have just like not used it there. Like
So, the effects are probably the most emblematic of this movie's weird fluctuating quality, because they range from genuinely impressive, like when they envelop entire rooms with the stuff.
Yeah, because it's pretty bad that the effects are more consistent in the original Blob, which was made on a minuscule budget.
Yeah.
In a small Pennsylvania town,
Like
in the 60s.
Like when they have to film it in small rooms and have the stuff envelop everything, it looks awesome. And it actually like, I wouldn't say the movie is at all scary, but it does manage to be, you know, shocking.
The scariest thing about the film is like the poster and the tagline. That's like the scariest thing about it.
Yeah.
And like some of the, I guess you would call it body horror.
Yeah, it gets pretty gross.
But it's more gross than scary.
Yeah,
it's more like, hey, here's someone's jaw that got ripped off. It's now marshmallow fluff is coming out of their throat.
I would say that to roll it back to Doctor Who, I've seen better horror of 70s, 80s Doctor Who, and like that show had no budget.
Yeah.
That said, it is a comedy horror, so I think there is some discussion to be had about the subtext that we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
And the thing that sets this movie above average to me is its dedication to that sort of satirical verisimilitude. The commercials are not real, but they feel like something that would be put on advertising slots at the time.
Yeah.
Well, those commercials are really elaborately constructed and pretty effective at conveying that whole tongue-in-cheek, Paul Verhoeven-esque, you know, atmosphere. The jingles especially are really good. The Enough is Never Enough jingles, written by Richard Seaman. I'm sorry, that's never not going to be funny.
His name is Richard Seaman, and he writes the jingles for White Cream.
Jizz!
Anyway, I think those commercials are sort of the highlights of the movie, if you want me to be completely honest.
Yeah, I'd still say I don't think they're done as well as like the Don Mancini conceived, Tom Holland directed like commercials for the first Child's Play. Like that commercial feels real.
Oh yeah, those animated cartoons.
Yeah,
or even toy store,
or even in the first one where there's the big like Chucky mascot who
in the toy store.
Yeah, well, no, in like on the TV in the beginning of the film.
Yeah, but didn't they film it in a toy store?
No, where they had it's like
that was a soundstage.
It was like a set that looks like, you know, like one of those kids cartoon sets for like a show like Zaboomafoo or something like that, where it's a big tree house set and it's like you can get the good guy dolls. Like that feels real. These commercials feel like they feel like spoofs of commercials.
Don Mancini, for the record, was always freaked out by dolls at that age. So
yeah.
Getting back to the stuff, yeah, it's not quite that good.
Well,
but...
I was still making a point there, but yeah.
Oh, whoopsie. Yeah,
and
keep going.
I also think that Paul Verhoeven is a lot better with creating fake commercials. You know,
the stuff with OCP and RoboCop.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
like like that sitcom that everyone loves. With the I'd buy that for
$1.
That feels like a cheesy network sitcom commercial. Like all of the commercials feel genuine in there. Heck, I'd even say that Futurama is better at creating fake commercials.
Honestly,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Slurm.
Thunder Cougar Falconbird.
But
I'm surprised I can still do Thunder Cougar Falconbird without like stumbling on it.
and you wonder why I brought you in to be a voice actor. Anyway, I do like the cheesiness at play here, even in the effects, which do range from awesome to downright choppy.
Yeah.
I think once again the biggest
I'd say the effects highlight is the practical effects done in the hotel scene, I would say.
Oh
That's the
yes,
highlight.
definitely.
Yeah, it like when they do the stuff on the walls, it actually reminded me of Nightmare on Elm Street, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did the same thing.
The same sort of
Like if they consulted the same people that like
practical.
Yeah, because I believe when they were creating the Nightmare on Elm Street one, they consulted the people for the Stevie Wonder video for Dancing on the Ceiling.
Oh yeah.
Because did that come out before Nightmare on Elm Street?
Wait, I thought that was Lionel Richie.
I was gonna say
Lionel
that's
Richie. Lionel Richie. Was that song before Nightmare on Elm Street? Because if not, then they consulted the people for the effects for that one Gene Kelly movie where he's dancing around on the ceiling.
Dancing on the Ceiling was 1986. That was after.
Oh, that's right. He actually consulted Wes. It was the other way around. They consulted Wes Craven.
Yeah.
And Wes Craven consulted, and his team consulted the people who did like the scene for that one Gene Kelly movie where there's the part where he's like actually dancing on the ceiling. Yeah.
So, the movie's commitment to that whole tongue-in-cheek satire of commercialism thing is probably my favorite aspect of it, especially considering the little-known fact that Chocolate Chip Charlie was actually
based off Famous Amos, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On based
For
on
the Famous Amos cookies, yeah.
for the spokesperson specifically, Wally Amos.
Yeah, for the Famous Amos cookie line. But
he had a similar fashion sense and a similarly over-the-top style of mannerisms.
And I do like how they got actual, like, commercial people for this. They got the lady from the Wendy's Where's the Beef commercials.
Oh,
for
yeah.
The One Stuff commercial. With
got
a
Abe Vigoda.
yeah, with a lovely cameo of Abe Vigoda playing her husband, and that's it. Abe Vigoda, for our generation, probably most well known for the Good Burger movie. Am I lying though?
That's depressing that you're right. It's so
Yeah.
depressing that you are right about that.
Abe Vigoda steals the scene in every scene he's in that movie, though.
Yeah, he does. Like,
They let him say I broke my ass in a kid's movie.
Probably one of the best moments of that movie.
Yeah, a great line delivery, too. He's just so, like, surly and annoyed about it. I broke my ass.
That's one thing I also really appreciate about this movie across the board. Michael Moriarty's craziness aside, I think the acting is fairly good.
Yeah, it's solid.
Yeah.
Brian Bloom's little brother does a good
Scott
job,
Bloom?
especially. Yeah,
I keep
Scott
forgetting
Bloom.
his name.
Scott Bloom.
Good old Skloom.
Skloom.
I
Skloom
don't
does
like
a good.
that name.
Skloom does a good job. You get the sense that the kid is channeling a mini, like, Danny Glover. Like, I'm too old for this shit.
Yeah.
Just like he's so done with his family, who are clearly hopped up on the stuff, which is super addictive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You ever think about how... I know I just dropped it, so you probably are not just thinking about it, but Skloom sounds like the name of, like, an evil little creature that forces you to solve riddles to get past it.
Yeah, like one of those kid.
Answer me these questions 3.
Yeah.
Sounds like one of those like kids point-and-click adventure games.
Yeah.
But
I have a million of them at my parents' house.
he does a
It's a Roberta Sparrow character.
he does a good job, and I think it's telling that the kid is able to be so natural while his character is doing some of the most reckless, stupid shit imaginable.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, definitely highlight of the effects is, like you said, the motel scene. But even some of the body horror stuff is really effectively gross too, like that poor Doberman or
Yeah, and how
Great
like,
Dane was
and
it
how
Great
like
Dane?
if
Whatever it was.
and
It
how
was a
poor
good-
dog.
It was a good boy.
and how if you consume enough of the stuff, you essentially become like almost hollow essentially.
Oh yeah,
It
like
consumes you.
Yeah.
It's like pineapple. You eat it, and it eats you.
have fun sleeping tonight, everybody.
No, there's an acid in pineapple that eats protein.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good thing I'm not a big pineapple fan.
I am.
Have fun. Anyway, I think we can get into spoilers, don't you? Cause
Could be worse. Could be durian.
yeah,
I guess.
time stamping this right here because we're about to talk about even more highlights of the
Yeah,
movie that
we'll
you gotta
just-
see for yourself.
Okay, just to make it easy, we'll say 56.
56.
Yep.
So Paul Sorvino.
Oh,
Oh my-
great.
Oh my God, Paul Sorvino.
Does a great job playing one of those unhinged right-wing lunatic militia dudes who just like you can just like if you press the right buttons, you can make him go on like a death march, and that's literally what the main character.
For context, the aforementioned Scott Bloom kid is from a small family,
Good old Skloom.
and he falls into a giant corporate espionage plot involving the stuff and the company that distributes the stuff. And this espionage plot puts him in the path of an FBI agent named Mo Rutherford, played by Michael Moriarty.
His name is actually David.
But you gotta understand, his friends call him Mo because anytime he gets money, he always wants Mo.
That joke wasn't even funny the first time.
Yeah. He's doing that same kind of incomprehensible, like, where are you supposed to be from southern accent as, like, Daniel Craig and, like,
It
Knives Out.
Yeah.
He's trying to do the whole white suited southerner dude,
yeah.
but it's all over the place, and Michael's lines
There
are
are
all
just
over the place.
straight up scenes where I could not understand a word of what he was saying. It was just like, what are you even saying?
Like, on one hand, it's funny.
Yeah.
Like, it is effectively funny, like when Scott Bloom rushes into the car after being chased by his zombified family, and he throws up in the car, and he says, "I'm sorry, I just ate shaving cream." And Michael Moriarty goes, "Well, you know what they say, we all gotta eat shaving cream sometimes." And I feel like that's one of the few points where his improv was actually legitimately funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just question little Skloom so much in this movie because he makes so many confusing decisions. Like, there's literally a point where they're like, "Oh, we're not letting you out of your room until you eat the stuff," and
He literally what I expected him to do was flush it down the toilet and then just
like,
come out with
bring
an
it
empty cup.
and not fill it with Barbasol and then pretend to eat and then actually eat Barbasol in front of people. Like, and not only that, even besides that, my thought was, okay, they've let him go. He knows something's wrong with them. His room has a window. He's gonna slip out and try to get somewhere. No,
He takes the front door.
I'm there's so many moments I question because this kid's clearly smart. Like, the second he sees the stuff move at the very beginning of the movie, he knows something's wrong and he's trying to stop it. So why he didn't just slip out of his room when they literally basically gave him a free escape?
Forget that. Why did those killer instincts of him not warn him not to slip into an empty tanker truck.
That's labeled for the stuff that's made by the company that manufactures the stuff.
Like, there's
which
infiltration.
logistically would get filled with the stuff.
The stuff.
And now, I don't want to alarm you people. I know we're in spoiler territory, but I still feel like I should warn you. Surprising twist here. The tanker starts to get filled with the stuff. I know. Shocker. Unbelievable.
Like, I like how this kid... I've noticed, too, that when he goes into the tank, he's got this look on his face like, yeah, it's all coming together. I'm infiltrating. I'm Solid Snake over here, bitch.
And what kills me, too, is he totally didn't have to do that because these guards had no peripheral vision because he's wearing your classic American boy attire. He's got the generic red t-shirt and jeans. Like, not a very stealthy outfit. And he's just hanging on top of this tanker, and no one spots him.
No one notices him.
No one notices him. There are literally guards stationed above him.
It's like, and the thing is, I'm remembering when we watched this movie, and I was like, you know how sometimes you ask like a 10-year-old, like, if they understand what death is, they'd be like, how do you want to die? They would be like, I'm gonna die drowning in candy. And then you realize how much of a bad idea that is.
Also a horrific death, though.
An absolutely horrific death, because if you've ever had shaving cream shoved up your nose, it's not pleasant.
No.
Oh, no. How have you, Erin?
My sister, when I was like 10 or 11, was like, here, smell this, and did that, and I got shaving cream all over my nose. I thought it was a jelly bean.
Oh.
And then it turned out to be shaving cream. My nose just got with the shaving cream.
Oh, God.
Because, you know, there's moisture in your nose. Yeah.
That is horrific.
Yeah.
But that is just, like, the effects are, all over the place. I'm sorry, I kind of lost the plot. We were getting back to Paul Sorvino.
Yeah.
Who, is in top form
he's a
here.
joy in this movie.
Yeah.
He's insane in this movie, but he's an absolute joy.
Just a man with literally no self-awareness, too. You know, he's like, I don't get it. Everyone, like, did you know 80 to 90% of the American people hate me? It's been that way since I was a kid. I was stronger, smarter, more handsome. It's just like, and it's like, buddy.
How about a touch are ya?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, somebody set up this guy's Tinder profile. Seriously, they're missing a real catch.
Oh yeah.
I like how the timing of his rants is the best part too. Like when they're in the radio station preparing to do the broadcast, warning everyone not to eat
and
the
they
stuff.
start playing the stuff commercial, and he lets it go on for 20 seconds before he freaks out about it, and it's like, okay,
Like, get that shit off of there.
And it's funny because it's like, why did it take him so long to like get angry about it and go, hey, pull that? He like lets the commercial run for almost its entirety.
It's just...
Almost the entirety. Like, it's a 30-second ad. He lets it run for 20 seconds, then he's like, turn that shit off.
Yeah, it's just...
Baffling.
It's like slow burn, though. You get this...
Yeah.
I think that works because, like, you get the sense that he's holding it in, like...
Okay, the
keep it
commercial's
together.
gonna play, and then
play.
we're gonna tell people about the warning. But no, he just like lets it go for most of its entirety, and then he's just like, "You sons of bitches!"
Like, may Sorvino rest in peace. Seriously, we lost such a talent with him.
Speaking of Paul Sorvino, did you? I've never watched the show, but you guys, do you know he's like he was one of like the big cast members on that sitcom that was still running, The Goldbergs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And in the last like season or so, when he was like sick, instead of like writing his character out, they just got a body double and just like did a really terrible imposing of like Paul Sorvino's face on it, and it's such like stilted line delivery that you could tell they just held a mic to Paul Sorvino, and it looks awful and it sounds awful. It's hilarious. Look it up.
It's like Forrest Gump but worse with those effects.
It's like, it reminded me a lot of have you ever seen the Camp Krusty episode?
Yes.
Mr. Black. That's what it reminded me of. There's no one I trust you kids more with than my close associate, Mr. Black.
But I kind of do like the ending, though. I think it's a cool little thematic reflection of the fact that
When something's off the market, it's not off the market.
It's still there.
Yeah.
Like, you do get your big climactic ending where a bunch of stuff canisters are burned and a bunch of the stores selling it are blown the fuck up like it's a Michael Bay movie.
Yeah.
And you think to yourself, huh, that was too easy. And then your whole feeling of that was too easy crystallizes when you see them feeding the CEOs of Stuffco or whatever.
The stuff, and then you see there's a black market for it, and people are dealing it off the streets. Although, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think we have to worry about that. My personal pet theory is actually that it's just like the actual drug trade industry, where you have, like, terrible dealers just cutting it. Those people are probably just eating whipped cream. And they're like,
and there's like 2% stuff in it.
Yeah, there's like so little, it doesn't matter. It's like buying Coke from a person, and they just cut it with like baby laxative or like a powder or something.
Yeah, I'm sorry, my chair is very squeaky.
Yeah, all of ours is. But speaking of squeaks, that was the pop filter squeaking. Don't worry. God damn it. Speaking of whipped cream, something that's always interesting to me about the stuff and the things that they use for the stuff is just how many different substances they use from shot to shot.
Yeah, honestly, it doesn't surprise me too much, but yeah.
In some shots, it's yogurt. In others, it's just regular old vanilla ice cream.
Some it's marshmallow fluff, and some it's whipped cream.
Some
worse, it's sour cream. And I'm like,
mayonnaise.
who the hell is gonna eat that?
Yeah. Miracle Whip too. But thankfully, the scenes in which it's the gross stuff, like sour cream, are not the scenes in which it is eaten, because they use sour cream in particular for the shot where
they get destroyed or it gets disposed of.
Where it gets disposed of, or in particular where Scott Bloom pours some down the toilet.
Yeah, that looked like sour cream.
Yeah, that was sour cream.
Yeah.
I went ahead and Googled it on the IMDb entry for that. But I do kind of like the whole low budget fun atmosphere that went into the making of it, and from what I can tell, the actors involved in it seem to have fun whenever Michael Moriarty calmed the hell down for 2 minutes. I especially like Garrett Morris as Chocolate Chip Charlie.
Yeah,
and,
he was good.
I especially love his he clearly does not give a single shit, and he's going to play up the famous Amos persona to the highest degree possible.
Yeah.
And he also gets the designation of the second best effect scene in the movie when he gets turned into a stuffy and his mouth becomes a giant singularity level hole and starts gushing out marshmallow fluff.
Yeah. I don't know about you guys. I think we're good to move out of spoilers. I don't think I have much else to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the stuff. It's just as flawed as I implied it was in the beginning, but still a good time. Still,
if you guys are interested and want to watch this, it's actually available legally for free with ads on YouTube. There's a with ads version you can watch on YouTube. And
then it's also on Amazon Prime. I just couldn't get my Prime account to work for
it's
this.
like specifically through some subscription channel, and from what I could see, it like a lot of stuff it's on Tubi. So yeah, you could check it out there. But for now, this has been our first October episode. Let us pass it off to Erin so she can tell us what we will be examining next time.
What you got?
So I have another Halloween favorite this is one of my personal Halloween favorites. Technically, this would be the second one that I've done. The first one is our Lost episode, which, if you've been around here long enough, you know what that is, and it's gone. Sorry, bye. But this is my other pick for Halloween. Daulton and I watch it basically every year, like every October we watch it. And it's a little independent film with vignettes of different Halloween stories, all centered around Sam, the spirit of Halloween.
Yeah.
Next episode is Trick or Treat.